So you probably know me very well for covering Chicago gangs, drill rappers, the real life crimes and gang wars that are going on behind the drill music. But something very strange is happening in Chicago right now, and I want to talk about it, okay? I've not really been much of a political person over the years. I've not really been one to insert myself too much into politics. I'm not even from the US, okay? We got a whole other political disaster going on in the UK right now, okay? And I don't know if you guys want to hear about that. Maybe I could make some videos about all the madness going on in the UK. If you want to hear that, let me know down below. But in this video, we're going to be talking about how Donald Trump and the FBI director, Kash Patel, have actually seemingly declared war on Chicago. And a lot of your favorite gangster rappers and, a lot of your favorite drill rappers, guys that, are infamous for their street activity in Chicago, might be in a spot of trouble. Because it sounds like Donald Trump is actually planning to just tear Chicago apart and really take down all of the gangs that are controlling the streets over there. Okay, and this has been going on for a few days, but there has been some crazy developments. Okay, so look, Trump authorized the deployment of 300, all right, 300, not that 300 you know from Chief Keef, all right? Trump's trying to really keep it 300 in Chicago right now. He's deployed 300 National Guard troops to Chicago, okay? This is a BBC article. We got a whole... Listen, in the UK, the BBC means the British Broadcasting Company, all right? Or corporation. We ain't on that kind of BBC, all right? But hey, right now, okay, the BBC are reporting that US President Donald Trump has authorized the deployment of 300 US troops to Chicago to address what he said was out of control crime. This move came hours after immigration officials says they confronted protesters in the Democratic-run city. Officials said an armed woman was shot after she and others allegedly rammed their cars into law enforcement vehicles. Democrats have for weeks criticized Trump's deployment plans, calling it an abuse of power. The Illinois governor, J.B. Pritzker, said Trump was attempting to manufacture a crisis. Okay, now look, I'm going to look at some other clips and some other links about this situation, but it really does seem like the situation in Chicago is getting very, very serious indeed. Look at this footage. All right. Okay. People suffering there from, pepper spray, and it's really crazy stuff that's going on. So there was footage of the National Guard actually arriving to Chicago. We actually saw what looked like military-style equipment traveling through the streets of Chicago. Okay, the National Guard here actually arriving to Chicago. They're out there in full force. This is some serious. They're saying this is the Elwood U.S. Army Reserve. They're out there with the with the gasoline tanks, all the artillery. They got these armored vehicles. Like, this is looking like this is looking like the kind of stuff you might see in Iraq or Afghanistan. Okay, not for the Iraq, all right, not for the Iraq, not for Chirac. These are the guys you would normally see in Iraq, and now they've been deployed to Chirac. Okay, so this is actually a very serious situation. Okay, they've got serious, they got all the sticks. People want to talk about all the guns and the pipes and the sticks that you got in Chicago, but U.S. military, National Guard, they got all type of attachments, man. So this is a news report from KTLA-5 all about the National Guard being mobilized outside Chicago.
National Guard troops have landed just outside Chicago, fueling a political firestorm between the White House and local government leaders who accuse the president of an authoritarian power grab. President Trump has called up 300 members of the Illinois National Guard and federalized about 400 from Texas against the wish of local leaders.
KTLA's John Fenolio live with the latest. John.
Mike, President Trump has repeatedly said that the U.S. is facing a, quote, invasion from within. He has suggested using American cities as training grounds for the U.S. military. But local leaders in Democrat-run cities and states where the president is pushing for troop deployment say there is no insurrection, no widespread chaos, and no threat to national security.
Tonight, Texas National Guard troops are assembling outside of Chicago as the Trump administration intensifies its immigration enforcement crackdown.
We're going to make Chicago really great again, and we're going to stop this crime.
The president claims the troops are needed to help reduce rampant crime, something the military is barred from doing under federal law, as well as protect federal agents and facilities. According to Chicago police data, violent crime is at historic lows not seen in decades.
The federal government is out of control.
Chicago Mayor Brandon Johnson, along with the state of Illinois, sued the Trump administration Monday to try and stop the troop deployment after a federal judge declined to block the move.
This is not about safety for this president. This is about authoritarianism.
The president has deployed 200 Texas troops along with about 300 from Illinois, despite objections from state and local leaders.
The Trump administration is following a playbook: cause chaos, create fear and confusion. Why? To create the pretext for invoking the Insurrection Act so that he can send military troops to our city. He wants to justify and normalize the presence of armed soldiers under his direct command.
Accusing the feds of trying to sow fear and chaos, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker played an ICE raid video posted by DHS Secretary Kristi Noem showing a recent military-style operation on a residential building on Chicago's South Side.
Imagine being a child awakened in the middle of the night by a Black Hawk helicopter landing on your roof.
This as DHS Secretary Noem traveled to Portland Tuesday, where a Trump-appointed federal judge temporarily blocked the administration from sending troops to the city. Democratic leaders there believe her visit is designed to inflame tensions that can then be used to justify the president's federalization of troops.
My real concern is that she's in Portland to stir up more trouble. This is a red line in America. You do not use the military against our own people. You do not create fake rebellions or fake invasions to justify it.
So this situation is very scary, right? And the state of Chicago are actually suing Donald Trump, as they said there in that report. Illinois and Chicago are actually suing the Trump administration over the deployment of the National Guard. And basically says that they're actually suing the administration. They're trying to block the White House from waging this battle against state and local officials. And a federal judge recently blocked a similar deployment of the National Guard to Portland, Oregon. Now, look, okay, I ain't got too many strong opinions on Donald Trump because I ain't actually from America. But Trump, clearly, his whole life, he is somebody that if you tell him he can't have something, you tell him it can't be done, he's going to go twice as hard. Okay, so this is going to be a really difficult standoff between Donald Trump and the state. Okay, he sent in these 300 members of the National Guard. All right, apparently, this is also going on. The administration was planning to send 400 members of the Texas National Guard to Chicago and Oregon. People are likening the move to an invasion. Okay, it's very, very extreme rhetoric. But the reason why this whole situation is spiraling out of control isn't just because of the control that Trump wants to exercise over the states. It's also because things have actually kicked off between ICE agents that obviously, as we all know, okay, anybody that's been following American news, American politics, okay, ICE have been essentially trying to enforce immigration. They've been trying to take people off the streets. They're trying to get rid of illegal aliens in the United States. Now, okay, I'm over here legally, okay, so I ain't really trying to rock the boat with that one. But a lot of people are very upset about it. Okay, it's been very controversial, and it ultimately led to some serious protests after ICE agents allegedly actually shot a woman in Chicago. So here's what was going on with that.
We're sorting out details of a tense face-off between protesters and federal agents this morning in the Brighton Park neighborhood. That's on Chicago's southwest side. When it was over, one woman was shot, 2 others arrested. Our Marissa Sulik was on the ground after dozens of protesters reportedly boxed in federal agents.
Today, chaos broke out near Kedzie and 40th Street in Brighton Park. It's the same area Homeland Security says agents were boxed in by 10 cars this morning. When agents got out, DHS says they saw one of the drivers that cornered them had a gun. They say the agents shot at her in self-defense.
The female called station been shot in the arm and legs, and the ICE agent shot her.
Homeland Security says she is a U.S. citizen who wrote threatening messages on social media toward agents. They say she went to the hospital, was released, and no agents were hurt.
The caller was instigating a fight with the agents. Caller told 911 that ICE was shooting live rounds at moving traffic.
Once protesters got to the area, Alderwoman Julia Ramirez says she saw another man taken by federal agents at this gas station nearby.
Since then, there was one car that was at this gas station with a person, a U.S. citizen, who has now been detained.
All morning and into the afternoon, there were tense moments between agents and protesters. There was yelling, objects thrown, and officers spraying pepper balls. Groups of federal agents kept arriving on scene. Within 20 minutes when we got to the scene here, we saw about 4 to 5 undercover federal agent SUVs make their way through the crowd here and go underneath the tape. And each time we saw this, we saw protesters fight back.
They seemingly are like doing it every 5 minutes to continue the irritation on people. It's almost like they want people to be provoked.
At one point, a military vehicle pulled up near the protesters and an agent drew his gun from the roof, pointing it at protesters below.
It looked like they were like in the military now. You know, it's like a war zone here.
Chicago police say they were on scene to document, maintain safety, and control traffic. They were not involved in the incident or the federal investigation. In Brighton Park, Marissa Sulek, CBS News, Chicago.
So look, it's very, very tense scenes, and the fact that a woman was shot during this protest has been a big part of why the tensions have continued to inflame, okay? It said DHS agents did shoot a woman at a protest in Chicago. Tensions erupted into violence over the weekend after federal agents shot and wounded a woman. And, you know, they're saying that the shooting happened after their vehicles were boxed in and rammed by multiple cars. We've been seeing multiple clips that have been going around on social media. And look, all right, regardless of what's going on, when officials, police officers, agents, federal agents start getting attacked, that's going to make things even more serious, okay? So this situation is really spiraling out of control. It's funny because actually one of Chicago's top cops defends the police response to the Brighton Park protest after the woman was shot.
In Chicago, some of it turning violent and outlining plans for what happens next. Our Sarah Maki is at Chicago Police Headquarters this afternoon, where an impassioned response from Superintendent Larry Snelling really took center stage. And the superintendent, Sarah, taking issue with some people questioning his staff.
Yeah, that's right. He was really trying to create a timeline of events on Saturday, things that happened from 10:30 in the morning until 4 p.m. Events that included a woman being shot by federal agents, multiple rounds of tear gas deployed by federal agents, and also criticism and allegations that Chicago Police Command issued a stand down to their officers, preventing them from helping those federal agents when boxed in by protesters. Police Superintendent Larry Snelling says 27 Chicago police officers were caught in the tear gas deployed by federal agents Saturday afternoon, a moment addressed by Mayor Brandon Johnson this way.
So just before we go any further, you got to understand how crazy this is. You've got the Chicago police getting caught up in a pepper spray or, you know, a tear gas deployment from these ICE agents, okay? So people talk about civil war, but this actually is the police actually getting caught up. I don't know whether you want to call it friendly fire or getting attacked by the ICE, you know, these federal agents that have come in to create, you know, to try and get control of this situation. But this is really bad because this is like complete breakdown of society and just federal agencies all at once.
CPD responded to attempt to de-escalate the situation, and ICE tear gassed our police officers.
But Snelling providing more context and a timeline for events Saturday, which started, he said, with a call for police at 10:32 a.m. about a shooting at 39th and Kedzie. Snelling said officers made contact with a woman who reported she was shot by federal agents, holding down the scene in which federal authorities say their car was smashed by the suspects before the shots were fired.
If you box them in with vehicles, it is reasonable for them to believe that they are being ambushed and that this could end in a deadly situation.
Tensions would flare again in that same area hours later. 12:28, Snelling says. Federal agents called for an assist, leading to this highly scrutinized exchange from dispatch audio.
If you guys can start heading there as quick as you can, and then just hold tight for instructions.
So the chief of patrol, clear everybody up. We're not responding over there. We're going to clear out as soon as we can, Spot. We're like locked in over here, so we're going to do the best we can to get out of here as soon as we can.
Snelling said they are still looking into the circumstances around that exchange, but adding they sent more officers at 1:09 and directing everyone to act in the moment.
And this is something that we're going to be talking to our officers about. This is something we're going to be talking to our leadership so that that message trickles down. If there are exigent circumstances, work now and then talk about your response later.
Snelling issued his full support for that chief of patrol, who is now under intense scrutiny because of that dispatch audio. He also mentioned inside that he is unsure how he would enforce a new executive order from Mayor Brandon Johnson, one that would create ICE-free zones on city property and also for private businesses who do not want to participate or allow access to ICE agents. From CPD headquarters, Sarah Maki, CBS News.
So you literally got the state. They're actually going to war. They're getting caught up. They're getting friendly fire from federal, federal agents, essentially trying to do what they got to do. And it is very crazy. So the FBI director, Kash Patel, has actually been weighing in on this. And he actually has announced, some interesting stuff on this Fox News segment. He claimed that there are 110,000 gang members on the streets of Chicago. He said, we learned that the Chicago streets have 110,000 gang members. All right, they had 1,200 shootings this year, 360 homicides. He's saying that when politicians choose to side with those metrics and not their citizens, President Trump is going to step in, the Department of Justice and the FBI are going to crush violent crime. Okay, so he's not playing around either. The FBI are on the case.
Taking the juggernaut that is demolishing the weaponization of law enforcement and bringing it to places like Chicago. When I was there today with Todd, we learned that the Chicago city streets have 110,000 gang members. That's right. You heard me right. They had 1,200 shootings this year alone, 360 homicides. When politicians choose to side with those metrics and not their citizenry, thank God we have President Trump and this Department of Justice and this FBI going in there and crushing violent crime. And President Trump sent us into these cities quietly to set the stage, to set up for the National Guard, to see the success that we saw in Washington, D.C., in Memphis. The FBI has been leading the charge in every single one of these streets because we know how to gather ground-level intelligence and we know how to put handcuffs on the bad guys, and we know that we have the backing of this administration. And most importantly, the agents at the FBI know that they have the backing of the American people and their government.
So you're probably wondering, right, what does this have to do with what I usually talk about, Chicago drill, Chicago gangs? Well, Chicago's #1, all right, drill subreddit, Chiracology, has been reacting to the news, okay? And I think this is really interesting, right? For me to cover this story is a little bit strange, but I think the intersection between the Chicago streets and the Chicago gangs and the FBI and the administration's attempts to, like, go in and try and take control of these areas, that's very interesting, right? And this is some unique perspectives that you're not going to hear anyone else, all right? And what's really interesting is a lot of these Chiracologists, they're so well educated on the Chicago gang wars that they're pointing out interesting inconsistencies in the narrative that's coming out from the state. People are saying it's 360 murders, a relatively low number for this late in the year. They're saying 110,000 gang members and only 300 murders. That seems extremely low for a high number of gang members, or was that just a made-up number? Now, some people are claiming it's a made-up number. Okay, they're saying you can say that, but when the feds start a massive surveillance of the trenches, it's going to be crazy. They're saying, nah, this ain't normal, and that ain't low. Most cities only see 40, maybe 50 homies a year. 360 is crazy. People are saying per capita is a way better way to judge crime. Chicago isn't near the top, and 360 is kind of low for Chicago. It's on pace to be one of the lowest murder rate years, continuing a trend of murders dropping significantly since the 90s, okay? And people are saying, look, this whole deployment is going to start more problem than it's going to fix, for real, for real. They're saying, question, do you think they're going to go to the hood like 051, the no-limit blocks, or are they just going to be downtown where the white people be at? Okay? Saying they will be in the hood, but they're not actually going after actual gang members. This is just a show of force, and it's testing the limits for the election season. If this was really about Chirac gangs and how crazy it is, they would be doing the same thing in Portland, D.C. Oh, they wouldn't be doing the same thing in Portland, D.C., and wherever's next. They're saying they ain't coming to Pocket Town, that's for sure. All right? So, okay. It's saying even the big names in the rap game aren't safe. Guys like Vonoff 1700, Q50, Lil Zay Osama, and Herbo were all moving sloppy before, and now they're trying to change their image because they're next in line and know it. The feds know that going after rappers is an easy way to make headlines and send a message. Not sure if you guys noticed, but when you see a sudden change in someone, that's usually a sign that the feds are closing in. We saw it first with Dirk, and now it's She Herbo. And imagine believing what he said about dropping his flag while his cousin Big Op, his muscle, is still around bullying people for talking about Herb. LMAO. Don't be fooled with that stuff. He still ain't drop his flag. All right. So they're saying it was way crazier than 360. That's light. They're looking for some clout. And yeah, the numbers are going to go down while they're around, but when they leave, it's going back up. And then this is a graph for Chicago homicides by year. We're seeing in 2024, it was 573. At the time when this was made, I don't know exactly when this graph was made, but it was only at 262. And then the highest year that's at least on this graph, it's back in 1991, and there was 929 homicides in Chicago that year. So it's not necessarily a bad year. They're saying 360 murders is pretty low for Chicago. They had over 700 in 2022. I guess that's there on the graph, right? But people have been saying, they've been saying there's over 100,000 gangbangers in the city since I was a kid 20 years ago. I was just in the city over the weekend, and we're all good over there. Ain't nothing going to change around here. Y'all need to spend more time outside with your families. This social media stuff effing your brains up. And they're saying the National Guard just landed in the wreck with 300 soldiers. Nothing normal with this administration. You need to chill. But people are clapping back. They're saying Chicago dudes are shooting up funerals, shooting senior citizens who have nothing to do with gang activity. Dudes are running drills at 6:30 a.m. in the morning. Don't forget about the 2 little dudes that got killed near the school. Right? You know about that one. How long did MS think they could run around a major city like it was the Wild Wild West before someone actually stepped in? Ain't nothing normal about the current situation in Chicago. Okay? This, I ain't even going to read that one. That one's crazy. All right? So anyway, what a lot of people have noticed that's interesting is they're focusing on this 110,000 gang members figure. They're saying Kash Patel's claiming that 5% of Chicago's 2.5 million residents, 110,000 people, are active gang members. And a lot of people are calling that out, saying that that's cap, that can't be true. This is classic Chiracology, man. They're saying Cash Gang 47 Terrortown. This dude done placed himself at the top of his own crew. He got hitters from Valhalla, man. That's what they're saying. They're saying 90,000 of them are Reddit hounds. Okay. People are saying, I'm part of that 110,000. I really gangbang 100. All right. So look, there was an attempt. Okay. People are saying that these numbers don't add up. Okay. They're saying in every picture I've seen of Kash Patel, it looks like he's actively dookieing in his pants. People aren't feeling him, man. But look, I don't want to be on the eyes of the Fed, so I ain't really trying to call him out. But Trump has actually, in the midst of all of this, okay, the mayor has actually clapped back. Right, he called out Trump, and Trump is apparently even attempting to arrest the mayor of Chicago. Trump has called for the jailing of Chicago mayor and the Illinois governor as the National Guard arrived in the city. The president accused Brandon Johnson and J.B. Pritzker of failing to protect the ICE officers as troops were deployed to Chicago. Donald Trump on Wednesday called for the imprisonment of Brandon Johnson, Chicago's mayor, and J.B. Pritzker, the governor, said that they weren't protecting them. He wrote on Truth Social, the Chicago mayor should be in jail for failing to protect ICE officers. The governor, too. He posted that on Truth Social. Okay. And the Chicago mayor had actually called out Trump, and he'd kind of said that perhaps there's kind of a racist element to what he's doing in the way that he's targeting Chicago. So this is the mayor actually speaking on it after Trump called for him to be jailed.
Called for you, Illinois Governor J.B. Pritzker, to be jailed for, quote, failing to protect ICE officers. What is your response?
Well, first of all, this president is unstable, unhinged, a double-minded individual that, quite frankly, is a threat to our democracy. And it's certainly not the first time that Donald Trump has called for the arresting of a black man unjustly. I'm not going anywhere. I'm going to stay firm as the mayor of this amazing city, which was voted 9 years in a row the best big city in America, and we're going to defend all of Chicago.
Yeah, and to be clear, he's also calling for the governor, J.B. Pritzker, to be jailed as well.
So Brandon Johnson ain't feeling it, okay? And this was posted in Chiracology. He's saying, bruh tried to pull that racism card, and even extremely woke Pamela Brown had to point out that he wants J.B. Pritzker, a white man, arrested as well. Brandon Johnson is undoubtedly the most incompetent mayor in American history. All right? Some people are going back and forth. They're saying it's not about race, all of that stuff. We don't need to get into all of that stuff. But Kash Patel is really standing on business. Okay, he's tweeted that he basically is Chicago will be saved, and this FBI will continue to crush violent crime there and all around the country. He's heading to Windy City now. He said steppers on the way, 150 miles an hour. He is on the way right now with the steppers. Okay, but in Chiracology, they're not feeling it. He says, I feel like they're only even coming here so they can take credit for the already existing decrease of violence that already been happening lately. That's just my opinion, that he says. People are saying this is exactly what they did in DC. They asked, just be in the way. They aren't going to do nothing. They're just going to stay downtown. But people are saying, I guess you ain't been keeping up in the news. They really go in, they sliding on the south side, okay? And there's a lot of wild stuff in here that I don't even want to read, but it says there's been a decrease in violence in Chicago. Of course, there has been. If they don't report certain crimes, drop them to lesser crimes, or let people go, the crime is never documented, then of course crime will be down. Welcome to the dumbass liberal cities, okay? So look, this situation is wild. I ain't never heard of anything where ICE agents is pepper spraying the police and the police don't want to come out to the calls. This situation is actually wild. And I do feel like it is interesting because if the feds are deciding that they want to get involved in these things, even if the violent crime rate is down, they maybe want to get some cases, get some motion, get some stuff moving so they can take credit for what's going on. And I know it sounds far-fetched, but I do feel like there is perhaps some truth to the fact that, you know, guys like G Herbo, some of these guys that are the most prominent rappers and figures that are connected to some of the gangs that have been waging war in Chicago for years, it could be a tough day for them. You never know. You never know. The FBI might say, you know what? If we want some good press, we're trying to claim that we sorted things out in Chicago. Let's try and grab some of the top names, some of the most famous people that are associated with gangs in Chicago and try and get them off the streets too. So this is definitely bad news for the likes of G Herbo, for your Q50s. You know, it's definitely worrying. They already got Dirk out the way with the murder for hire charges. But I think this whole situation is crazy. So look, this is a slightly different video from me as usual. I don't usually get political, but I think when Chicago and Chiracology start talking about politics, I definitely sit up and take note. So let me know what you guys think down below. Do you want me to cover some more political stories? I could cover some more of what's going on in the wider American politics. I don't have too many strong opinions about the American politics because I'm not really involved because I'm not from there. But at the same time, I'm pretty politically literate and I do follow politics. I'm passionate about politics, you know, just following it and the impact that it has on our lives. And I do kind of have a bit of an understanding about this. I did do A-level politics back in the day. So yeah, I got a couple of little bits of political knowledge. But anyway, let me know what you guys think, man. If you want me to cover more of this stuff, I will. If you don't, then we gonna dead it there. And I will never talk about this ever again. You guys let me know what you want me to do, how you want me to play it. And I appreciate you tapping in with all the content. Gonna have some big updates coming for you guys on the little Dirk case soon. Still waiting for David updates, but there ain't really too much new stuff about David. I see a couple of links, but I don't know whether it's really enough to make a whole video about. But let me know what you guys want to see from me going forward, man. We're gonna keep running up the content. I appreciate everybody's support. And I'm out of here, gang. Peace.